Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. We have a very special guest today. He's a live streamer, he's a political commentator, and he's a powerful public figure. Please give a very warm welcome to Mr. Hasan Piker.
Okay. What's up, everybody? I hope everyone's having a great time. Before I get started, I asked if they'd ever actually hosted a Twitch streamer here before, and apparently I'm the first, and judging by my performance, I'll probably be the last. I don't really know why I'm here, but or what I can contribute to the conversation in terms of the ongoing genocide in Gaza that has unfolded over the past year and a half almost, that many other more credible speakers could speak to convincingly from a point of personal involvement and a position of authority. Having said that, however, I'm going to try to do my best here. This august body has seen some of the best minds inside of its halls, and now it's hosting a Twitch streamer. Ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you following the footsteps of intellectual giants as nothing but a simple man. A simple man who understands right from wrong. And sometimes that's all that matters. In the words of my friend, the late great Michael Jamal Brooks, there's nothing complicated about apartheid. The morality of it is clear. If the roles were reversed and a captive Jewish population of 5 million people were being systematically starved, sieged, and dominated, everyone would understand what's going on. Its ancestral lands being destroyed, everyone would understand what's going on. So in his words, it's not a complex issue. It's super simple. It's the most powerful country in the Middle East. It's backed by the United States, the most powerful country on the planet, and it acts on another population of people with total impunity, and is never held accountable for anything. Well, I guess some things are changing in that regard, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But there is no symmetry in this relationship, period. That's what Michael Jamal Brooks said. So I see no need for obfuscation, no arguments for complexity, no reasoning for preemptive genocide. Israel is an apartheid state, and its inception was a violent one, with the forced displacement of 700,000, which gave birth to a settler colonial entity that continues to dominate the lives of more than 5 million Palestinians under its illegal occupation, totaling 15 million Palestinians around the globe that are permanently displaced. Its demographic concerns, Israel's demographic concerns, are never seen in the same lens that we view nationalist and fascist projects of the past. It also happens to be one of the most impressive nationalist projects the world has ever seen. From the revitalization of Hebrew as a language, to finding a nation state for a revolutionary people who had been historically oppressed, victim to countless pogroms and the Holocaust, Israel could have been a story of success and overcoming great odds. Except its inception was built around a lie. That this was a land without people for a people without land. Albert Einstein called out that lie early on as well. 10 years before the inception of Israel, Einstein described the proposed creation of the state as something which conflicted with the essential nature of Judaism. He warned against the violence of Menachem Begin and many other early Zionist militias. In 1948, Einstein and a number of Jewish academics sent a letter to the New York Times to protest against a visit to America by Menachem Begin. Menachem Begin also was never able to actually come to the UK either for his involvement in previous bombing campaigns as well. In this letter, they denounced Begin's Herut, Freedom Party, likening it to a political party closely akin in its organization, in its methods, political philosophy, and social appeal to the Nazi and fascist parties. Einstein understood the dangers that nationalism of this sort presented. After all, he had fled Nazi Germany. Nowadays, This sort of analysis is met with tremendous resistance. Given our comforts living in the heart of empire, we focus more on the feelings of those in the West rather than the violence that our tax dollars are contributing to. But I want to go back to the beginning for a little bit, which helped me understand the ways in which Israel's violence has remained unchecked, especially because the similarities in the contemporary way that Israel has dished out its violence are glaringly obvious. I want to talk about the atrocities committed in Deir Yassin, the former Palestinian village a few miles west of Jerusalem. I say former because in April 1948, over 100 of its Arab residents were executed, ruthlessly slaughtered. There were graphic stories that were told of some of the survivors, including but not limited to having a baker and his son lined up against the baker's oven and trying to force the baker to throw his son in the oven. And when he refused to cooperate, throwing his son in the oven and then throwing him in afterwards. The only reason why we know is because there were survivors that were left to tell the story. So they could go and tell the other Arab villages that if the Zionist brigades were coming, that they must evacuate. The massacre was committed by Zionist forces. Radical right-wingers led the attack, but were supported by the Haganah, which later became the IDF. But Deir Yassin was not an isolated massacre. It was a pivotal moment. Deir Yassin helped convince the Arab governments to fight Israel. People fled their towns and villages, fearful that what happens at Deir Yassin might happen in their towns. 700,000 people never allowed to return to their homes. Palestinians call this the Nakba. It's also known as catastrophe. But this wasn't just the fog of war. The Nakba was, in the words of historian Ilan Pape, a master plan for the massive expulsion of Palestinians, also called Plan D or Plan Dalet. Hundreds of thousands were expelled before Israel's so-called War of Independence had ever started. Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion, to use Pape's words, orchestrated the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. These were not merely nationalists or settlers run amok. This was clearly defined state policy. To this very day, Israel denies having forcibly expelled Palestinians, instead claiming that they voluntarily left their homes. This myth can be considered one of the earliest and perhaps most powerful forms of Hasbara. In Hebrew, Hasbara means advocacy or explanation. In the Western world, it just means lying. In 1948, there were Jewish extremists supported by the main military raiding and depopulating Palestinian communities. In 2024, we have the same problem. In 1948, the Israeli government told the world that Palestinians were responsible for their own suffering, lying about the orphans, widows, and the homeless that Israel had created. In 2024, we have the same problem. And in 1948, when people all over the world took notice of Israel's savage treatment of Palestinians, Israel could only respond by lying, using Hasbara to tell a different kind of story about its atrocities. In 2024, we still have the same problem. Now, people always ask me, Hasan, why is Israel so important? And I think this is a rhetorical trick. Why is Israel's allegiance to America so important? I think a lot of people ask this in earnest, but some people ask because they want me to say anti-Semitic things. They think that I'm going to say, oh, because Jews are powerful, they control the media, they control the government. This is not true. That's not the reason. At this point, at different points throughout time, the story in Israel and Palestine has been more or less the same. But ultimately, Israel has served different purposes for the United States, its primary benefactor. Israel has been our Cold War ally. Israel has been a punisher of misbehaving Arab oil states. Israel has been a partner in Western espionage. It is an unsinkable aircraft carrier in a resource-rich region. That's very important to American State Department interests. But for 66 years, the violence has continued with broad support from the West. The Israeli government has been free to occupy Palestinian lands and destroy Palestinian life. Ever since the failure of the Oslo peace process in 2000, the rise of the settler movement, and Benjamin Netanyahu taking control of the Israeli government, America's ironclad support for Israel has remained exactly that. But in the last decade, something has changed. Two things have changed, as a matter of fact. The first is that Israel has totally lost the younger generation of Americans, but also the younger generation of the Western world in general, who are shocked by its policies in occupied Palestinian lands. And the second thing that has happened is that Israel's powerful advocates in US politics and media, the Israel lobby, no longer have a total stranglehold on the left and the right. The media is not as favorable to Israel as it once was. I'm obviously a living, breathing example of this. I think someone like myself would not exist in any other format, in any other medium, in any other time. But that's not the entire story, obviously. I'm not just here to focus on myself and what I do. I think I want to talk a little bit more about the broader picture, the bigger picture. You never could really hide a genocide from the world, but it's especially difficult in the present moment. Every day, we are inundated with footage from Gaza of untold atrocities, countless atrocities. We see depictions of the worst that humanity has to offer. We see children in body bags, drone strikes, mass displacement, the horror. We see missing relatives, sick babies, wailing mothers, and so on. This accumulation of this evidence, freely available on today's internet, is what is currently burying Israel in the court of public opinion. It's turning Israel into a pariah state. Hasbara wasn't built to refute this many dead children. Israel was really bailed out in the media in the past because of how slow the establishment press was to recognize the atrocities that are unfolding. It took prestigious outlets many weeks and months to tentatively identify an obvious genocide that quickly came together in a matter of days. Nowadays, you learn about the gruesome conditions of Sde Teiman, a concentration camp, or quadcopters sniping children, or broadcasting the sound of children crying for help to lure out unsuspecting Palestinians with the express purpose of murder, months before it reaches the headlines of legacy publishers in the West. That is, if they're covered at all, like the pro-rape riots, pro-rape January 6th, that took place after the Israeli government tried to prosecute 9 concentration camp guards for, I'm sorry for using this language here, but for raping Palestinian prisoners to death on camera. I say tried because not only did the riots succeed, the main perpetrator became a television personality. And so we have learned since October 7 that Israel can conduct such wide-scale atrocities, killings, kidnappings, and bombings and expulsions, even without its usual PR shield, so long as its actual political shield in Washington holds up, as well as the Iron Dome. Now, there is a subtle but horribly corrosive effect that this has had on how people understand the world around them. At the very moment when fact-based reporting and serious journalism is most needed in this time, people are distrustful of the news. Platforms like Twitter routinely surface the worst of the worst kinds of content, but the most divisive, most hateful content. But Elon Musk is not the only person responsible for this. And I hate Elon Musk, okay? I hate Elon Musk as much as you guys hate Oxford College. I heard that if I say that, I'll get some applause breaks there. So that was my exit ramp. But it's not just Elon Musk, it's not just Twitter. It's happening all around. Young people, men in particular, who don't have much education or literacy skills with no hopeful prospects of the future are being propagandized by waves of right-wing influencers who have never had megaphones this loud. Although this issue most often gets brought up in the context of the 2024 election and Donald Trump, there's more to this. I think it's important to connect it to Palestine as well. These are forces who want to normalize the current levels of violence and to convince people that actually it's good to be this bloodthirsty. While it was Joe Biden who gave Israel the blank check with which to commit a genocide, that decision has created an entire galaxy of right-wingers who are actually in position to cash it. And cash it they are currently. If you've seen the Donald Trump cabinet picks, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The traditional forces that could keep this kind of thing in check, particularly in politics and in media, are unfortunately weak. And they're getting weaker by the moment. They're out of power. They're broke. They're technologically weak. They don't understand the space. They don't understand the online content creation sphere. And I feel like they've, most importantly, with their coverage of Gaza, discredited themselves to an entire generation. It seems right now that those people who genuinely desire for a better future, who want an alternative to the genocide, will have to start looking amongst themselves, looking within themselves, their friends, and away from the mainstream if they want to help bring something like justice into the world. So I stand before you as a man who simply wants some semblance of justice for the Palestinians. I urge you not to lean into nihilism and succumb to helplessness, because you do not need the academic pedigree to know right from wrong. All you need is your moral compass. As someone who has seen the Palestine question evolve over my past 10 years of public advocacy, I never would have imagined international organs demand legal restitution from America's most valuable asset. After all, there are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. Thank you.
Hey, if you like this video, please subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss out on any future videos.